Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me tonight. We're going to give everybody a chance to jump on, give folks a chance to jump on here, and we'll get started here shortly. Hope everybody's been doing well, thriving, not just surviving. I'm happy to be back on with you. It's been a couple of weeks. Took a couple of weeks off as I recover and heal up. And I want to thank you all who've reached out, prayers and thoughts and texts and calls and emails. I appreciate that. Thank you for the love, the outpouring of support. And I'm doing well, doing well. Yeah, so we'll give folks a couple more minutes, a couple more moments to jump on and join us. I think I got a great topic for us to talk about tonight, something that's near and dear to my heart. You know, what are we teaching young men is what I'm calling this talk tonight, this conversation tonight. What are we teaching young men? This is near and dear to my heart. A good portion of my adult life has been supporting and ministering to and helping our younger generations, whether that was through Boys and Girls clubs, through youth pastoring as a youth pastor at a couple churches, and having youth programs, of course, as a senior pastor, being a volunteer for Concerned Black Men National, volunteering for Omega Gents program in my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So working with young people has just been intertwined in everything I've done as an adult. So I hope this will be informative, a good discussion, a good conversation for us to have. All right. Alexa, pause. All right, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. It's about 7:02. Once again, thank you for joining me. Of course, I am your host, Dr. Devin Oten, and you have joined me on my podcast, Meaningful Conversations with Dr. Devin Oten. We're talking tonight about what are we teaching our young men? You know, young men are learning every day. They are learning. They are observing. They're seeing what's going on around them, and they are learning in many different ways. But the question I pose tonight in this conversation, what are we teaching these young men? What are they learning? And who is teaching them? Who are we allowing to teach them and speak into their lives? You know, the world is filled with social media influences, you know, entertainers have opinions, athletes have opinions, and you have all these conflicting messages, right? About manhood, what manhood is, what leadership is, what relationships should look like, what responsibility looks like, what purpose looks like. And many young men are searching for direction. And unfortunately, many of our young men are confused because of all of these different points of view, opinions, vantage points, if you will, can be very confusing for them, right? So in this episode of Meaningful Conversations, we explore what values should look like, behaviors should look like, what some beliefs that are being passed down on to the next generation of men, what that looks like. So we discussed the role tonight of fathers. We just had Father's Day. We just celebrated Father's Day. Mentors, coaches, educators, our faith leaders, right? And communities that are shaping these young men, shaping these young lives, these young minds, right? Because if we don't teach them, if we don't take the responsibility of teaching our young men, someone else will gladly, right? And for those of us who are spiritual, we know that the enemy of all things godly is looking for that opportunity for a young man to be uncovered, to be unmentored, to be unfathered, so he can come in and try to raise havoc in a young man's life, right? So welcome back to Meaningful Conversations. I've been out. I didn't come on the past 2 Wednesdays. I apologize for that. I just decided to take a couple weeks off and just get acclimated to my current new normal, right? And I've been, chomping at the bit to get back on here and talk with you and have these conversations with you. So tonight I want to ask you a question that has been on my mind, in my heart for a little while now, the past several weeks. What are we teaching young men? I want you to think about that question tonight. What are we truly teaching young men? And in certain communities, unfortunately, a lot of women are raising men, right? Or raising these young boys. And in a lot of cases, a lot of women are not allowing or making it very difficult for their fathers or for other mentors to come in and help them raise these young men. So what are we teaching young men? I'm not talking about what we're just saying to young men. What are we actually teaching them, right? I am a teacher by nature. I am a teacher through and through in my heart, right? I just finished my doctorate and I'm teaching in higher education a couple of days a week. I'm doing substitute teaching in the public school system here in the area in which I live, and looking to really pour this information, this wisdom, this knowledge into as many people as I can in this stage that I'm in right now, this season, if you will, that I'm in right now. Because what I know about young men, they are always watching. They're watching how we as men and as women, how we handle conflict. They're watching how we treat our women, not only the woman that we're with, our wives, our significant others, but how we treat our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, our sisters, right? Our daughters. They're watching how we treat women. They're watching how we manage money. Our young men, they're watching how we respond to adversity. They're watching how we lead, right? Lead our families, lead on our jobs, lead in our communities, lead in our places of faith. They're watching all of these things. And whether or not we realize it, we are teaching them something, whether we know it or not, because they are watching us. So the question is not whether we're teaching them. The question is, are we teaching them the right things? Are we teaching them to operate in the right manner, right? Brother James, good to see you, man. What's up, good brother? Good to see you. Man, I pray the family as well. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hey, cuz, I see you joined us. Thank you for joining us tonight. And those others who I'm unable to see, thank you for joining me tonight on Meaningful Conversation. So tonight, let's talk about it. You know, many young men are searching for identity, right? They don't know, in a lot of cases, who they are or who they want to be. That's why it's so critical that we think about what are we teaching them, right? So they're searching for their identity. You know, research continues to show us that most young men struggle with questions related to purpose, belonging, their confidence, and their identity. They're searching for it. They're looking for it, right? And if we are so busy with life or busy with the things that we have going on and not taking advantage of the opportunity to speak into these young men's lives, we are missing a great opportunity, right? To raise up that next generation of men in our communities, right? Because you and I are not going to be here forever. We're going to need some men to step up, step in, take this thing over, take the bull by the horns, if you will, and minister, right, to our young men. So research shows us that many young men, a lot of young men, they're struggling. And they have questions, and they don't even know how to formulate these questions. They don't even know how to ask these questions, because we as men have not stepped forward and say, hey, look, you can ask me anything. You can talk to me about anything. And like I said, this is near and dear to my heart. I spent many years working with a lot of boys and young men, Boys and Girls Club as a youth pastor. I'm still in touch with so many of those young men, right? Several of them I've been, the best man in their wedding. So many of them, even to this day, reach out to me and tell me how much of an impact my mentorship had on their life. And man, that makes life so valuable for me. That makes it so meaningful for me that I can say that there are a lot of young men out there that I've had the pleasure to be able to be a part of their life, be a part of their development, be a part of their maturation and their growth from boyhood to manhood. So when positive guidance is absent, young men often seek answers from very unhealthy sources, right? We've seen the story play out in our communities many times. A father was not present for whatever reason, and they started hanging out with, some of the older guys in the community, and they had them getting into some things that they shouldn't be getting into. And now we have a whole nother young life that's in the system that's messed up, right? For one reason or another. And that's because of the absence of positive guidance, right? Hey, Che Dutch. Yeah, you've been always been a leader to youth. That's how I met, yes, how you met me. That's right. That's correct. And it's been a wonderful thing for me. That I've had the opportunity to speak into the lives and to lead and to mentor so many young boys and young men. So we see that social media has become one of the primary teachers, one of the primary drivers of the teachers of our children, right? They're learning from social media. And that's not a good thing in a lot of cases, right? Because we got some people out there teaching some things that are not, in the long run, not good. Even in the short run, the short term, it's not good for young men. So many young men spend hours each day consuming all of this content online that shapes their worldview, their views on what success really looks like, what relationships look like, what masculinity looks like, what their self worth looks like, right? What their value to society looks like. In a lot of cases, it's telling our young men that if you are not ultra wealthy, you can't have certain things. You can't have a good quality of life. You can't have a good quality woman, right? You can't do a lot of different things. And those messages are very, very harmful, right? Because there's only a small percentage of the population who will make six figures, right? On their job, in a business, some sort of venture. And that's not to say you shouldn't strive for those things. But the reality is you could have a good quality life and not be ultra rich, right? So we got these messages out there on social media telling them that, hey, this is how a relationship should look. You should treat a woman this way and treat a woman that way. Nah, we need some men, some fathers who understand what it looks like, how to treat a woman, how to treat a mother, how to treat a grandmother, an aunt, a sister, a daughter. So we need the right types of people teaching our young men how to be successful, what success looks like, what good relationships looks like, what masculinity looks like, and what their self-worth and the value they can see in themselves that they can bring to a family, right? To a wife, to children, to their community, to their job, whatever the case may be. So influence is happening, my brothers and sisters, whether we participate in it or not. I want to say that again. Influence is happening in the lives of these young men, whether you and I are participating in that process of mentorship. So it's best that you and I wake up and say, you know what? Since there is this learning going on, I need to be involved in some way in helping these young men grow, develop, and mature. So, mentorship changes outcomes. You know, there's an outcry for mentorship. There's a lot of young men out here. They don't have good, solid men to help guide them along the way. So there's an outcry right now for mentorship. Why? Why is mentorship so important? Because mentorship changes outcomes, right? Hey, Mildred, I see Mildred joined us. Hi, Patty Cake. Thank you for joining us tonight. So we see how important mentorship is. If you're spiritual, we see that, you know, Jesus came to earth. He mentored 12 men and literally changed the world. He mentored 12 men and changed the world. We see it all throughout scripture. You know, Elisha was mentored by Elijah, right? Samuel mentored David, you know, the process on and on and on. This is how spirituality works. It works through mentorships, preparing young men to serve in the house of God, to serve in their community with godly character and godly integrity. So we see that studies consistently show that positive mentorship improves academic performance. We see young men when they have good, positive role models, good, positive mentors in their life. It improves their academic performance. It improves their emotional development, right? We need some emotionally developed young men growing up, right? Who can handle the pressures and the stresses of life. A lot of young men are growing up and they don't know how to handle. They're not mature emotionally to be able to deal with certain things, right? And please don't get upset with me. A young man's going to take on a wife. Women are built different. They can be emotional, right? And you have to have the emotional maturity, emotional development to be able to handle that and not make the situation worse. So we see a good mentor will help a young man develop emotionally. A good mentor will help a young man become confident, right? Because the world wants to beat down our young men and discourage our young men, right? But a good mentor will say, hey, look, that's just the obstacle in the road. You can get over this. I overcame it. You know, such and such overcame it. This one overcame it. You can do it. Here's the roadmap. Let me help you and show you how you can overcome these obstacles in life. You know, a good mentor will show a young man a pathway to success, not just drive up in his nice car or take him to his nice home, but no, lay out a pathway to show a young man how to become successful, how to follow a certain path that'll get you to where you're trying to get to as a young man. So young men, they need examples, right? They don't just need advice, they need an example. Okay. I want you to think about that for a minute. We got a lot of folks who think mentorship is just giving advice or telling someone what to do. No, they need a shared experience with you in your life, right? I can remember as a young man and, you know, volunteering at Boys and Girls Club. And literally, if any of you, the young men who grew up going to the club, I saw Che Dutch jump on, but I can remember this was in Baton Rouge, where I was able to help open another Boys and Girls Club in Baton Rouge. And man, on the weekends, I'd have 20 kids in my little 2-bedroom apartment on campus at LSU. 20, 30 kids, parents dropping them off. And they'd just be there hanging out the whole weekend, playing video games and eating pizza and building this friendship and this camaraderie with each other, right? And it was just a joy for me to have them uh, with me, right? Because they were in a safe place. They were with someone who loved them and wanted to see the best for them. And it didn't matter to me that I had 20, 30 kids in the apartment, right? And I was able to expose them to college life. They would go to the library. I worked at the main library, Middleton Library. They would come in there. I would have them all sitting in there reading books and working on homework over the weekend, right? We would go to different sporting events because we would get tickets for Boys and Girls Club. We would work the tarp for the baseball games. We would get into football games, basketball, all of these things. So they had all of these great experiences because there was a man, myself, a young man at the time, who saw the need for mentorship. A lot of them didn't have active fathers for whatever reason in their lives. A lot of them didn't have like older brothers or uncles that were able to mentor them. So it was just a great opportunity for me. And this is a call, right? This is a clarion call for men on this call to get involved in the lives of young men. And remember, they need examples, not just advice. So, and character, when we're talking about helping young men, character matters more than the image, right? Yeah, let me see. Che Dutch says, I feel as a Black man in our society, it is our obligation to mentor and lead by example. Absolutely. Yes. All right, Dr. K. I see Dr. K has joined us. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be back too. Yes, absolutely. So when we're talking about teaching young men, the character that we have is more important than this image that we try to portray. So many young men, they're being taught how to look successful before they're being taught how to become successful, right? Um, they're looking at people who have success and they want to uh, reproduce that success in themselves. But what's most important is character, right? I've heard it said time and time again. Character is who you are when no one is looking. Character is who you are when the lights are off, when it's dark. Who truly are you? So as teachers, we want to be teaching our young men about having good character, right? Having integrity. This is what our community, this is what our women need. They need men with good, solid, strong character and integrity to take and lead our communities, lead their families, right? So character sustains what talent creates. So you can have a lot of talent, but if you don't have character, it's unsustainable. So the other thing we need to be thinking about when we're talking about teaching young men, and if you want to jump in, please jump in with your thoughts, your examples, or any questions that you may have. So another point or fact we need to consider, we need to talk about accountability, right? Man, that's a big buzzword that I hear a lot right now, accountability. You know, being accountable for the things that we do, being accountable for our mistakes, right? Um, so true mentorship requires, I mean, true, if you're truly interested in mentoring our young men, it requires both encouragement and correction. That's the part that we don't like, right? That's the challenge for our young men. Accountability is an act of love. And as mentors to these young men, if we want to be committed to this thing, right? We want to see, significant, productive outcomes. True mentorship requires not only encouragement, but it requires correction. We got to be in a place, now this is for our young men, where you have to be open to be corrected. That's the only way you're going to grow, the only way you're going to mature. You have to be open to be corrected. I've seen a couple of videos recently on social media where these young kids who may be on the spectrum, who may be having behavioral issues, maybe having some sort of mental issues. And the two or three that I saw, it was these young boys uh, hitting their mothers. The one person who will go to the end of the world for you, will go to hell for you, right? Will do anything for you. Your mother, right? Hitting their mother, throwing things at their mother. And one mentor had a solution for that. He started this camp, a boxing camp. And for those kids who were having these issues, he put one of the kids in the ring, a boxing ring, with another kid. And he said, from now on, when you get frustrated to the point where you feel you need to hit your mother, I want you to come get in this ring with an opponent. And kid got in the ring with the opponent, and the opponent was tagging him, right? I mean, tapping in on him. And he was ready to quit, ready to give up. And the mentor was like, no, 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 no. You get upset and you want to hit your mom, the one person who loves you beyond anything in this world. Now you're going to get in the ring and you're going to learn how to deal with those emotions. When you feel those emotions, you're going to be thinking about this butt whipping that you're getting in this ring right now. And I thought that was an interesting way of doing it. Of course, I know some of you therapists and psychologists would look at that and say, oh, no, that's not the proper way to do it. But in this particular case, I don't know, it seemed to work for the kid. And another one, a whole nother example, the mentor, did some really clever things to help the young boy understand that going to this violent response when you're feeling a certain way, that you're not getting your way, your mom is not giving you what you want. Here's some other tools to be able to use. So I bring that up because, true mentorship is not just encouragement, it's correction, right? And, accountability is a demonstration, an act of love. So young men, they don't just need support, they need standards. I'll say that again. They don't just need support, they need standards. These are the standards, okay? This relationship we are forming, developing, we got to put some standards in place. Okay, I'm going to spend time with you. I'm going to take you places, expose you to different things, but I have a standard. Okay, your behavior is not well. Your grades are not well in certain subjects. I want you to get more committed to that. We're going to get some tutoring for you, so on and so forth. We have to have standards. Standards help us teach young men, right? Young men want structure. They need structure, right? And this is how we set the standard to teach our young men. All right. Yes, I see Cuz say, yes, accountability is key. As you know, when we come on each week, I have a faith-centered perspective. And tonight, that faith-centered perspective is strong men are not defined by power. They're not defined by how strong you are, right? How much weight you can pick up. That doesn't determine a strong man. Strong men are defined by responsibility, or one of the things that strong men are defined by is responsibility. Taking accountability, taking responsibility, right? We need to set the example for these young men that we take responsibility as men, right? We have households, we take responsibility to lead our household, to provide for our household, to protect our household, right? We take on the responsibility of being that father, being that big brother, being that uncle, whatever role that we are set in as men currently. We show responsibility. Men, if we are going to teach young men, women, if we are going to teach young men, we have to show them responsibility. So for those single moms, guess what? That young man needs some responsibilities. Okay? That young man needs some chores, right? That young man, even if you have the money to get the grass cut, he should be out there cutting that grass. He needs to learn how to edge that lawn, right? Trim those hedges. He needs responsibilities. That's how we teach young men. Now, that's just an example. You don't have to do exactly that. That's just an example, right? I thank God that I was fortunate being raised by two Black women, my mother and my grandmother. I learned how to clean a house. I learned how to cook for myself, right? I learned how to take care of myself. I had a lot of responsibility growing up, right? So I knew what responsibility looked like. And unfortunately, because we're not teaching our young men, they don't know what responsibility looks like, right? We handing everything to them, doing everything for them, not teaching them how to wash their own clothes, right? How to wash dishes, how to cook for themselves. I can remember being a young man. I'm dating women. They come to my house. My house is clean, right? They come to my house. I didn't already cooked. I didn't prepare food. Matter of fact, I believe this is part of what got me in trouble with my first marriage, right? Because I didn't get a chance to see what her capabilities were, right? Because you came to my house is already clean. You came to my house, food was cooked. And, now that I'm thinking about this, let me just go ahead and say this because this is a teaching moment. I used to teach this in my church to our young members, our youth church, that this is my belief in America, in this Western culture, civilization that we live in. Women and men, young women need to get out on their own and take care of themselves. Get out on your own, take care of yourself. Young men, do not, now this is just me giving you what I have learned over the years, my point of view, my vantage point. Do not get serious and marry a woman who has not taken care of herself, has not paid some bills, has not paid some rent, has not paid some utilities. Because in my particular case, I took a young woman out of her mother's house and brought into my house, and she literally had no appreciation for what it took, this responsibility to pay this rent, pay these car notes, pay this insurance, get this food, pay these utilities, etc., etc. But a young woman who had done that may have had a different outlook, right? May have had another level of appreciation. Wow, I know I kind of went off on a tangent with that one. Let me see. I see my man Rod Carter jumped in, and he said, "I applaud the boxing camp. There are two and be more." Yes, agreed. Correction. They want structure and developing the best in themselves. Yeah, Rod, man, it's good to see you, man. Yeah, I hope everybody up there is doing well up at Career Communications Group. Let's see. Rod also said creative teaching, movie like Sanfofa. I'm not familiar with that movie. Many are clueless regarding the why of the anger. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So remember, strong men are not defined by power, how strong you are. It's defined, one of the things, it's defined by responsibility. So leadership begins with serving, not controlling. I want to make sure I say that to mentors. Being a mentor is not about controlling these young men. It's about serving, communicating that to them. I'm here to serve, to help you get to that next level of maturity, right? So, as is our custom, I have some questions I want to pose to everyone tonight. You can share your responses in the chat and we can share that with everyone. Or these are just some good questions to take away with you, key takeaways to think about and to consider. What lessons do you believe young men are learning from today's culture? What lessons do you think young men are learning from today's culture? What lessons are they learning? Looking at our culture, what lessons are they learning? I'll give you a few moments. Someone to jump in the chat and share with us. What do you think? What are some of the lessons that young men are learning from today's culture? I'll tell you one of the things that concerns me that young men are learning is that this life is easy. It's things are going to be given to them. Things are going to be easy, right? And when they get out there in that real world and life start lifing, as I hear people say all the time, they don't have the tools, they don't have the skill to overcome some of those things. Hey, baby, I see my wife has joined. I see Michelle has joined. Yes. Let's see. I still need to figure out how to change my name, Junior here. Okay. Oh, that's my son? No. Is this is that my son joining or is that my brother, my older brother? I can't tell. But you said I still need to figure out how to change my name, Junior here. Okay. I think it's my son. I would say taking violent actions without thinking about the consequences. Okay. Yeah. Tell me who you are. Is this Devin Jr.? That's actually a really good response, man. I would say taking violent actions without thinking about the consequences. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, man. And that goes back to one of the points we talked about earlier, emotional development. That's why emotional development is so important, because these young men, they're not developed emotionally. Somebody say something, step on their shoe, look at their girlfriend, and the first response is violence. The first response is, oh, I got to protect, my manhood. Somebody's tried to attack my manhood. And that's an emotionally retarded response, right? Violence. And when I say retarded, I don't mean that in the negative way. Retarded just means stunted growth. Your growth has been stunted. That's all. Yeah, so that's a good one, son. Yes. All right. The next question. What role do you think fathers should play in young men's development? What role should fathers play? What role should fathers play? And remember, I said this on a couple of episodes some time ago. This is from a spiritual perspective. You go to Eastern cultures in Africa and specifically Africa, Middle East, even in Asia. Grandfathers, grandparents are revered in a lot of culture, right? Unfortunately, in Western civilization, we don't revere family as much as the Eastern cultures do. We'll put our parents in a home quicker than you can say put them in a home. Um, and the reason I bring that up is because grandfathers are critical to communities. So much so that we see that the enemy of all things godly, specifically in our community, addressing specifically our community, um, he removes the grandfather from the lives of the young men and the children by removing the father from the lives of the children. So you can't have a grandfather if you don't have a father. And we see in the old customs, in Jewish customs, where when you became an elder in their particular culture, it was your job to sit at the gate of the city each morning to watch what came in and to watch what went out. So there were certain things as an elder you're responsible for not letting in or not letting out. Now that was the role of the grandfathers. That was the role of the elders, right? Because the father was out working. So if you remove the grandfather and he's not on his post at the gate, stopping things from coming in and not allowing certain things to leave out, you got an issue. I want you to think about that. So many things have been allowed to come into our communities, right? Because we don't have grandfathers, because we didn't have fathers. Okay, I know that's a loaded topic, So much stuff in that. And I know I just kind of brushed over that, but we did talk about that a few episodes back. Yes, I see where Patty Cake says young men seem to lack good communication skills. Yes, yes, people need to step. Yep, people need to step up. I see Shane joined us. Yes, rest in peace, Grandpa times two. That must mean both grandparents or grandfathers are gone. Yes. Um, yeah, communication, as Patty Cake said, communication is so critical. Teaching our young men how to communicate, right? Communicate not only within their family structure, how to communicate at school, how to communicate with a young lady. Um, there's so many things that we need to learn how to communicate with, right? And as a Black father, you even have to teach your sons, our nephews, how to communicate with the police, right? Because we are policed very differently from everyone else. So I see Shane has here, the Black community is not a monolith, and our advocacy and organizational abilities should not be singular. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Let me see, Devin Jr. Fathers, I feel present, the balance between mentorship, giving wisdom, love, and correcting habits that will limit growth. Point you're making about the grandfathers. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those comments. All right. I want you to think about this question. Who was the most influential male role model in your life? Think about that. Who was the most influential male role model in your life? Most influential. I can tell you right now, it was my Uncle Tyrone, my mother's brother, one of her brothers, a brother from my grandmother. Of course, my grandfather had was married after my grandmother and had several sons and daughters. But my Uncle Tyrone, he was so influential. He taught me how to drive. Um, he exposed me to life being much bigger than what I was exposed to as a kid growing up, in New Orleans. He exposed me to so many different things. He was, the most influential male role model in my life, without question. Think about that. Now, think about this. What lessons did you learn from that person? The person who you say is the most influential male role model you had in your life. What lessons did you learn from that person? What lessons? Let's see. Let's see. Dr. K said, right, it was her grandfather. Okay. Let's see. Shane says it is important to teach and understand Pan Africanism and indigenous practices. They can help us let's see, staying in our environment and live collaboratively, coexisting peacefully as our predecessors would have wished. Methodology for achieving financial freedom and the ongoing of American dream, one we can all stand behind if we so choose. However, the important part in this dialogue, thank you all for joining, and please keep going. Thank you. Thank you, Shane. Thank you. See, Patty Cake said her dad was most influential. Yes, yes. Closed mouths don't get fed. Sometimes it's best to listen. Thank you for your service, sir. Yeah, thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. Yes. What are some of those lessons that you learned from that person? What are some of those lessons? Yeah, I learned from my uncle that entrepreneurship, man. He was always on the cutting edge of starting a business and working for himself. So I get that. I get that from him. One of the great things I learned from him. So this is the last question I'll ask because we've gone over the time that I wanted to be on tonight. What values should we be intentionally teaching the next generation? What values should we be teaching the next generation? Specifically, let's talk about young men. What values should we be teaching our young men that we want to see really take hold in our communities? Yeah, let's see. Patty Cake said to respect myself and ensure others respected me as well. Yes, yes. My son said, the man speaking. Thank you for that, son. Yes, I can remember my kids. We started a business. We started real estate ventures business, had some rental properties. We started a landscaping business. And during the summer, my son, of course, was out there with me, cutting grass and planting, putting plants in, shrubbery in. And that was a way for him to earn money, put money in his pocket. His sister, she would process the checks, put them into QuickBooks, and that was her way of earning money. So we were in business as a family, right? Let's see. Dr. K, my grandfather taught me that even though I was a, a smart as I was and graduated from high school at 15, was for me to always remember I was a Black woman, taught me how those people looked at us. I think that's what you were saying. Yes. Wow. I didn't know that, Dr. K. You graduated from high school at 15, but it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. Yep. Absolutely. Let's see. Let's see what else we have. Shane says self-love. My undergraduate roommate my freshman year told me you can't help others if you don't help yourself first. Change my perspective and help me in my personal life as well as my friendships. That's a good point that you bring up, Shane, because my uncle, who I'm talking about, Tyrone, he tried to teach me a lesson when I went off to basic training for the Air Force. He went and took me to set up a checking and savings account at the credit union that he was a part of. The credit union office was in the Superdome, on the first floor in the Superdome. And, he's like, hey, direct deposit all your money there. When you come back, you'll have, a good financial foundation. You'll be able to get your car. You'll be able to do this, get your furniture, whatever you need as you go off to college, so on and so forth. And he told me this, and it didn't strike me when he told me, but years later, I got it. He said, Dev, he said, he called me Rock. Our family used to call me Rock back in the day when I was growing up. He said, Rock, he said, if you and a bunch of other people in the pit, he said, the best thing to do is to get out of the pit and go and get some help, or go and get some tools to come back and help other people get out of the pit. He said, but if you're trying to get out of the pit, and if you're trying to pull people up at the same time you're trying to get out of the pit, nobody's going to get out of the pit. Didn't get it when he first told me. I may have been 18, 19 when he told me. But when I became a husband and then a father, it hit me what he was trying to teach me, Get yourself out first, like Shane just illustrated. Get yourself out first, then you can properly and efficiently, and more successfully help others. All right, let me see. Shane says, my grandfather said you're going to have to work twice as hard. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Twice as hard. Let's see. Devin Jr., Devin Sr., you showed me you can build something from nothing. Showed me the value of the dollar. Working for your future is just as important as the knowledge inside work and outside of it as well. Yes. Yes. Those are those lessons, man. Yes. All right, man. Time is well spent. Man, the engagement was really great. I thank you for that. I want to share a couple quotes with you. A couple things that I thought about, and I said, you know what, let me write them down. So one, if we don't teach young men who they are, the world will tell them who they should be. If we don't teach young men who they are, the world will tell them who they should be. Next one. Young men need examples they can see, not just advice they can hear. Young men need examples they can see, not just advice they can hear. Next one. Character is what remains when no one is watching. Your character is what remains when no one is watching. Leadership is not about status. Leadership is about responsibility. I can't stress that responsibility enough. Every generation teaches the next generation what matters most. Say that again. Every generation teaches the next generation what matters most. And I can confidently say we haven't been doing a good job in a number of areas, right? Think about that for a moment. What matters most in your opinion? And whatever that is, we should be teaching the next generation. So young men are listening, my brothers and sisters. They're watching, they're learning. The question isn't whether they're being taught. The question is who is teaching them and what lessons are they learning? Our communities, our families, our schools, our churches, our organizations all have a role to play. Why? Because today's young men will become tomorrow's fathers, leaders, husbands, mentors, pastors, educators, decision makers, politicians. Today's men, that's what they're going to become. So let's make sure we're giving them something worth passing on. So everyone, thank you for joining me on Meaningful Conversations tonight. I hope this was a meaningful conversation for you. And until next time, as we always close out, we say stay focused, stay faithful, and keep becoming who you are called to be. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.